107, that's the number of times Dr. Anthony Fauci invoked the Fifth Amendment during a highly contentious Senate hearing today. Fauci, who was a lead member of the White House coronavirus task force, delivered an opening statement, but the 85-year-old declined to answer any questions from Republican senators on the origins of COVID-19 and how he handled the U.S. response to the pandemic.
Have you deleted, destroyed, or instructed anyone to destroy records after learning Congress is investigating these matters?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Did you have any evidence to support a 6-foot separation rule when you gave that advice to Americans?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
What color tie are you wearing?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Dr. Fauci's attorney was removed from the hearing about an hour in while trying to explain his client has the right to invoke the Fifth Amendment, which protects Americans from perjuring themselves. He says Fauci is, quote, on solid legal ground in asserting the privilege. After the hearing, Kentucky Republican Senator and chairman of the Homeland Security Committee, Rand Paul, told reporters he plans to schedule a vote to hold Fauci in contempt of Congress. Earlier, Senator Paul told the takeout all he was looking for was a, quote, honest answer.
We do believe he destroyed records. That's against the law. And I think that he could have answered that honestly, and he wouldn't have had any problem, no criminality because of his pardon. But in choosing not to answer it, I think it is obstruction of Congress, and I think there is a very real chance that he could be prosecuted for that.
Ahead of Fauci's testimony, Senator Paul released a trove of the doctor's journal entries retrieved from a government server. Many detail his rise as a public figure during the pandemic and the deterioration of his relationship with President Trump, who once hailed Fauci as a national hero. For more, let's bring in Arden Farhi. He is the managing editor for CBS News' Washington Bureau. Arden, was it surprising to hear him over and over and over again plead the Fifth?
Lindsay, I think it was a bit surprising because their history together, they've had these fiery exchanges on Capitol Hill before. But I think what you're seeing here is three things. You're seeing politics, you're seeing science, and you're seeing the law all come into play. And that's kind of how we ended up where we are today. On the science front, the committee is doing a legitimate investigation into the pandemic. And there are questions about the origin of the coronavirus, for example. On the political front, you saw Republicans really take their shots at Fauci, and they knew that they weren't going to get pushback from him, so they asked very provocative questions. And on the legal front, you remember that Joe Biden gave Fauci a blanket pardon that covered the preceding 10 or so years as Biden was leaving office. So Fauci has no legal exposure prior to today, but should he have answered questions and perhaps lied to Congress, there might have been a legal case that could have been brought to the Justice Department. That said, there is also the question of whether he could be held in contempt of Congress for not answering those questions. And the chairman, Rand Paul, has said that he is going to have a vote on that in the committee next week.
So did we learn anything in this hearing? And I apologize for sneezing in your ear. Did we learn anything, and what happens next? I think we learned that Republicans feel one way about Anthony Fauci and Democrats feel a very different way about Anthony Fauci. That contempt hearing is going to be very interesting, and I can quickly walk you through the process. The committee will vote if it passes out of committee, and given the makeup of the committee, that's probably a likelihood that Republicans would support it. They have a majority. It would then go to the full Senate for a vote. That would require 60 votes in the Senate. That is less likely given that Democrats would have to support it. But let's just suppose, for the sake of argument, it did pass the Senate. Then it would go to the Justice Department, and they would ultimately have to decide whether to seek a prosecution against Dr. Fauci. Should we have a standing date with you on TDR every night, Arden?
I'm ready. I'm here.
Let's do it. Thank you so much for your expertise.